Hello everyone, and welcome back to the garage with Bonesaw. Today we'll be doing a re-review, actually. It's the VK3001H again, because as of patch 8.9 this thing's now a heavy tank, instead of a medium tank. Previously it had been a tier 6 medium, and now it's a tier 5 heavy, and it's really deserving of another look, because it is a substantially different tank compared to what it was at tier 6. I know the VK3601H has also become a heavy tank instead of a medium. However, it's very much the same as it used to be, and my review for it still stands. However, the 3001H really does deserve another look. Now, this tank is very different from what you would remember it as being. However, it's also very similar. It's similar in that, on paper, this tank looks very much like the joke tank of tier 5. And as my previous review showed, this thing really wasn't a joke at tier 6, and that's still true. It still has that same weak armour, 50mm of hull armour, 80mm on the front of the turret. Not tremendously well armoured. Its engine power has dropped to about 400, and its speed limit's now about 35 kilometers an hour with a 22 degree traverse speed. So it's not a particularly manoeuvrable tank, and it's not particularly fast either. It does, however, get up to its top speed pretty quickly, so it accelerates alright. It does have a pretty good horsepower to weight ratio, but you're not going to win any races in this thing. You're also not going to be very durable compared to some of your competitors at tier 5, such as the Churchill Mark 1, or more importantly the KV-1. What this tank does have in abundance, however, is a lot of things that people would often overlook. Most importantly, 360 meters of view range, which is fantastic for tier 5. As well as 710 meters of signal range, meaning you can really stay in contact with your allies. What's also important is this tank has a very good gun selection. Now, it starts off with a pretty weak choice in its bottom 3 guns. This tank now does research from the other new heavy tank, I think it's the Dirk-Bruchswagen 2. I don't know how to say it correctly. We just generally call it the Herper-Derp wagon, so that's what we're calling it from now on. So you research this thing from the Herper-Derp wagon, and you have access to the L24 75mm gun, which we all know is junk. It's horrible on any tank. The 5cm L60. It'll get you by, but it's not very good. It struggles on the Panzer III at tier 4, and it's really not going to do much at tier 5. However, on the stock turret you can mount the 75cm L43. And the good thing about the L43 is that you don't require any other research on this tank to get it. I'll go to the tech tree and you can have a look. So as you can see, you can go straight from the L24 straight to the L43. You can also mount it on the stock turret, and that's great if you have any of the other tanks at tier 5, like the Panzer III on 4, because the Panzer III on 4 stock gun is the L43. Which means you'll have it unlocked straight away for the VK3001H if you've already researched the Panzer III on 4. The Panzer IV will also unlock this gun for you, so you can very early have at least some competitive 75mm gun to mount on your tank. It's not the best gun, but it's enough for what you need early on. You'll also likely have some of these other engines unlocked from other vehicles. I believe some of these... No, this one's unique to the 3001H, so it turns out, no, you actually do need to start from the stock engine. But the top engine I do know carries over to the VK3601H, so there is a point in going all the way through this tank and unlocking everything. Now, once you unlock the secondary turret, you have a choice of many other guns. Now, the only ones you really need to research are the 75mm L48, which is also available on the Panzer III on 4 and the Panzer IV, so grinding some of these tanks together or beforehand can also be a good idea. And the L48 is a pretty good gun at tier 5, but it's more of a medium gun. It's good on the medium tanks, but for heavy you want something a bit meatier. You want something with some real punch to it. And that's where these other 2 alternate guns come in, the L70 and the L58 Kurdish. I'll get back to those in a minute though. The L40 goes straight onto the VK3002M. Great tier 6 medium tank, really good. I'll get onto it in the future, but if you want to go straight to it, fine, that's what you do, go straight to the L48. If you want to go to the 3601H and the heavy branch, you've got to research the L28 105mm gun. Now, the 105 isn't fantastic. I don't even really like it on the Panzer IV, but each their own. You can use it, and it'll unlock you the VK3601H. The two best guns on this tank are not compulsory. You don't have to unlock them for anything, but realistically, you do want to unlock them. Now, first off, we have the 75mm L70, and this tank really can put this gun to good use. It's a very stable firing platform, and the L70 is a fantastic gun at this tier. It used to be on the Panzer IV, and it was fantastic then, and it's still just as fantastic on the VK3001H. You also have the option of mounting the Kurdish Gun. The Kurdish Gun used to be unique to the VK3601H, and it was also unique in that it was the only gun in the game where its premium ammunition also increased its damage. Previously it had really good penetration, but only about 60 damage per shot, unless you were using premium rounds. However, they gave it to the Aufklärungspanther at tier 7 as well a couple of patches ago, and when they did that they buffed the damage. When they repositioned the VK3001H on the tech tree as a heavy tank, they gave it access to the Kurdish Gun as well. They also changed some of the stats, because previously this thing had been just out-competing the L70 way too much. Now, both the L70 and the Kurdish carry across to the VK3601H, so if you want to go down the heavy branch, it's a really good idea to research these two first, because it means you'll have some substantial firepower on the 3601H as soon as you get it, and that can really help you compete more effectively, especially because it means you don't have to use that 105mm L28 howitzer, which, granted, some people do enjoy, as I've said, but I'm not a fan of it, and I would much prefer to have the L70 and the L58 Kurdish unlocked right from the get-go, because the 3601H can mount them on its stock turret. At least the Kurdish. I don't believe it can mount the L70 on the stock turret. Now, the 3002M carries across one of these guns. Its top gun is the L70, as we can see in the tech tree here. And the L70, I believe, does not require the top turret in order to mount on this tank, which means that right from the get-go you can drive this tank around with its best gun, and that means you can really compete much more easily at tier 6 with the 3002M. But anyway, back to the 3001H. So really, that's what you want to do with this tank. You want to really grind through and unlock all the modules to really benefit those tanks later on down the track. However, it's not a very difficult thing to achieve. This tank can really do some good damage and earn some good experience. So let's get back to looking at the tank proper in the garage. So, same as last time, you still have that thin armour, but you also have those very large tracks that are very good at eating damage. This is a good tank for teaching yourself how to angle at low tiers. Very much like the Tiger, you need to do those very harsh angles, try and keep your enemies angled like that on the very corner of your tank, and that will help you bounce some of those lower caliber rounds. Larger caliber rounds will probably penetrate you, but that's a given with 50mm of armour. Generally speaking, however, your Kurdish gun will really punch back much better. Generally speaking, you do want to use the Kurdish. The L70 is a good gun as well, but the Kurdish just shoots that a little bit faster, has a little bit extra penetration, and its rounds also travel much faster. It means you really don't need to lead targets as much, and you can really just ensure those very high rate of damage on target. Overall, this tank's maneuverability can suffer, so in terms of equipment, Grouses can be a really good purchase for this tank. Really stop it from getting bogged down on soft ground, and really just increase its general ability to get around. The gun rammer can be a good choice as well, just to increase that rate of fire, but it's not 100% necessary. Torsion bars aren't really needed for increasing load capacity. You've got an extra roughly 4 tons of load capacity, so you really don't need those. But if you want the extra suspension durability, go ahead. This thing does tend to eat rounds in its tracks, so if you want to stay mobile, fine. Camo net and binoculars, really good pick for this tank. Its playstyle is that of a long-range sniper. You want to be engaging enemies at a further distance than they can engage you. So if you can stay invisible on a lot of maps like Malinovka, Karelia, things like that, and use your superior view range to pick off the enemy, you'll have a tremendous advantage. Wet glass ammo rack. Ooh, not so sure if the tank needs it. Generally speaking, if you get ammo racked, it's not going to affect you tremendously, because you should be staying at long range, and you should have a repair kit to fix it, so it's not really going to save you too much. Coated optics can also be good if you want to stay mobile with this tank. Enhanced gun laying drive, also a viable choice, not really needed though. These guns do take a little bit to aim, but generally it's not too long, and the good rate of fire and good dispersion on these guns mean you can generally put some good shots out. Spall liner isn't amazing, but you can put it on. It's a heavy spall liner, and it can really help you survive from some of those high explosive shots. Toolbox can also be good if you find you're getting tracked a lot. In terms of equipment, I think a repair kit is absolutely necessary. If you want, you can run Octane. Octane's pretty good because it gives you that little bit of extra engine power to move around, and it also gives you that little bit of extra turret rotation, so you can move your turret around easier and engage things like light tanks that might be trying to circle you. On the topic of light tanks, you do need to be a little bit careful with this thing, as a lot of light tanks can penetrate you, so you do have to be careful when you're engaging them. However, your 75mm gun can very easily kill them quite swiftly. Hold down positions are also quite good in this tank. Covering up this front plate is great because this 80mm gun mantlet can very easily absorb quite a few shots, even low caliber high explosive rounds. Means you can stay alive much easier. However, the gun depression and elevation on this tank isn't amazing. It has some, but not much, so you have to be careful and try not to engage on slopes too much. Overall, you can't really do the whole hit and run high speed flanker thing this thing used to do, but now you're very much the sniper tank. You really got to play to that role, engage the enemy from a distance, and try not to brawl too much. It can be done, but generally you don't want to get noticed, and that's when this thing is at its most lethal. You can very swiftly take down even tier 6, tier 7 heavy tanks with this Kurdish gun if they don't pay enough attention to you. Very, very effective heavy tank at this tier now. And it's still one of my favorite tanks in the game. Once again, on paper it seems like it would not be very effective, but if you play it correctly, it's more than a match for most of its competition at its tier. You just need to make sure that you're not leading the charge. I know that heavy tanks generally are supposed to be the ones pushing the lanes and choke points, but for you, you really got to hang back and let your gun do the talking. So here we are on Fjords in the German tier 5 heavy tank, the VK3001H. Just the first battle. I actually took this tank out in patch 8.8, and it was a really good yardstick to get a feel for this tank now that it's no longer a medium. As you can see, I'm actually mounting the L70 75mm gun here, which is not the top gun that this tank can mount. The top gun is the 75mm Kurdish gun. But the L70 can still compete just as effectively on this tank. It's not quite as good, but it's still a very effective gun at tier 5, more than capable of taking out most of the enemies you'll really be wanting to focus on. As you can see, I'm the only heavy tank on my team, really. The enemy team have two heavy tanks in the form of a Churchill 1 and a KV-1. Now, both of those tanks are formidable opponents if I get in close range with them, because with only 50mm of armour, all round, this tank can be really quite vulnerable, especially if that KV is mounting the U11 122mm howitzer. The 85mm gun is still a pain, but anything with a howitzer is a real threat to this tank, because with 50mm of armour it's very easy for them to penetrate you with high explosive rounds and do full damage, which means they can really wreck your tank. As you can see, we've spotted two tank destroyers up here and that top pass, but I'm going to ignore them for now. They're out of my range of fire, and this M4 is a much more pressing target. So as you can see, very good shot there into the side of that M4. Secondary shot, as you can see, the rate of fire on this gun is very good. More than capable of bringing shells up at a rapid rate. I've already taken out the enemy's Dirkbruchswagen 2. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce those. Myself and Fageline generally just refer to it as the Herp wagon. So, you know, it's a surprisingly good heavy tank as well. It's not as bad as I was assuming it would be, much like this tank, but it'll be for another time. For the moment, we're mainly focusing on the 3001H. So as you can see, it's not quite as mobile as it used to be. It doesn't turn anywhere near as well, but it can still get up to a decent speed of 30 kilometers an hour pretty quickly. And the turret rotation is quite good. I mean, you can very easily track targets with your turret, even at close ranges. The only things you'll really struggle with are very, very fast tanks like BT7s, T50s. So as you can see, I'm getting the outflank on these medium tanks. Got a shot on that M4 Sherman, taking him down to 9%. Try and get a silhouette on his rear. He's backing up to engage me, and I'll finish him off. As you can see, against targets like that, this gun really can do a tremendous amount of damage. I'm just going to sneak down this Lee, try and put some shots into his engine deck. As you can see, he's backing off very quickly. Unfortunately, I don't have the second shell up in time to damage him again. I'm going to have to move down and try to engage him from a less than favourable position. However, he's running, and this Matilda started firing back, so I'm going to re-engage the Matilda. He appears to be using the 3-inch howitzer, I think, which isn't very clever of him, because he seems to be using mainly against my gun mantlet on my turret, which is thicker than the hull of my tank. As you can see, with that shot to my hull, did much more damage with that high explosive shell. Thankfully, I did not lose any crew. So I'll take out that M3 Lee, and very easily just cleared out this position. So 3 kills, currently sitting at the most for my team, which is a pretty good achievement for a first go in a comparatively new heavy tank, considering the fact that it just does not play anything like it formerly did as a medium. But as you can see, it's still got a good amount of health, can survive quite a few hits at tier 5, and is more than mobile enough to get where it needs to be. And with the accuracy and rate of fire on these 75mm guns, you can really pick your engagements and make sure that those enemy heavy tanks really stay at arm's length, where you can do the most damage to them whilst mitigating the damage you take in return. So this is pretty much the game for us won, but I'm still sitting at tied best with 3 kills apiece, so that's GG. So here we are on Wide Park in the German Tier 5 heavy tank, the VK3001H. As you can see, it's a very Tier 6 heavy match. We've got some very potent things, the KV-1S. Unfortunately, I don't get to take that M8 out just quickly as I want to. Oh, we've got a KV. Let's put a shot into him. Fortunately, that will go low into the berm. As you can see, this Kurdish Gun really does take an amount of time to aim. But again, a lot of Tier 6 tanks here, a lot of Su-100s, ARL-44s, although thankfully, as you'll see, the ARL-44 seems to be running stock equipment. But with 50mm of armour, I really don't want to get on the wrong end of many of those heavier tanks. So I'm just trying to take it easy here, lurk in these bushes, kind of camp this berm, because if they have to come up over the top, I'll get some good shots into them. As you can see, I've got some shots on the back of this ARL's turret, so I'll put some good shots in him with this very accurate 75mm Kurdish Gun. Get about 3 shots at him. Nope, unfortunately I only get 2. He was a little bit quick on the reverse there. As you can see, he was running the very large stock turret with more than likely the DCA-30 90mm gun. Put some shots into this Su-100. I don't want to have a Su-100 on my flank, so that's taken his track off and allowed my team to kill him. As you can see, the rate of fire on this Kurdish gun, as well as the shell velocity, mean it's a very, very effective gun, both at close and long ranges. You can very easily take down enemy tanks quite quickly. So as you can see, we're winning 9-4. It's a pretty easy win. However, we do have 2 heavy tanks over here, a KV-1 and a KV-1S, both very potent enemies, especially considering that KV-1 is mounting the U11 122mm howitzer. I really don't want to be hit by that 122mm gun on either of those tanks. As you can see, easily penetrating the front of a KV-1S, bouncing off his plate as the angle changed there as he retracted back the hill. As you can see here, very easily doing some good damage to this KV-1. And because he's ignoring me, he's ultimately paying the price. I'm very easily and very quickly dealing a substantial amount of damage to him. So this is really not what you want to do. You really don't want to ignore a VK3001H with a 75mm Kurdish gun. Very easily damaging both of these heavy Russian tanks. But as you can see, the KV-1S does have an advantage in terms of speed over us. This tank doesn't maneuver quite as well as it used to. As you'll see here, quickly take out the ARL-44 with a shot to the side place. Now taking on this KV-1S, setting him afire to finish him off for a third kill of the game. So as you can see, the VK3001H, despite the fact that it's no longer quite as nimble as it used to be, it's still very effective, and you can deal a very, very rapid amount of damage with that 75mm Kurdish gun.